Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's series of podcasts where we are trying to know your subjects better. In today's session, we are going to address current affairs, and it is going to be with none other than Mr. Abhinav Srivastav sir. In today's session, we have someone who is not just the current affairs faculty in Vajiram and Ravi, but one who has got 50 plus selections in last 2 years through Smart Current Affairs program. One who has ensured 25 plus questions in mains from this very program. So I think he's the very right person to discuss current affairs with. So we are absolutely honored to have you today on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Shubhangi. Thank you so much for having me.
Sir, because we are talking about current affairs, there's a very generic perception that current affairs is newspaper.
Right.
And this is somewhere where it goes wrong for students.
Correct.
So how would you describe current affairs from the perspective of UPSC CSE?
So defining or describing current affairs. Okay, so that's a good question. Actually, I would take an analogy, and I think current affairs is just like the clothes that we wear. So we keep on changing clothes as per the season, isn't it?
Right.
By looking at the clothes of the person, you can identify which season is going on. So similarly, current affairs is, it keeps on changing with what exactly is happening in the world, what exactly is happening in India.
Right.
But the core foundation remains the same. Just like we remain the same, the core foundation remains the same.
Right.
It's just that we are changing the upper layer. So current affairs is actually the connection between the bloodline or the core which is running through the country or the world, and how exactly it is getting manifested, and what exactly are we perceiving. So that is how I would use the analogy to describe current affairs. It's the upper layer of how exactly things look like presently.
Right. Very fresh way of looking at it.
Right.
So as you said, current affairs is something that needs to be seen with changed seasons for the analogy.
Yes.
At the same time, when we are looking at the whole cycle of UPSC, we have 3 big stages here.
Right.
Prelims, mains, and then we have personality interview as well.
Right.
So in this context, does current affairs also evolve or change how you look at it?
Absolutely. So the current affairs has relevance at all the 3 stages of the examination, be it prelims or mains or the interview. And I would say that the importance of current affairs varies in these 3 stages. Or let's say, for example, in prelims examination, you have the value of current affairs is more of factual value, right? It adds factual. You need to have, you need to know the topic. You need to know the factual information under the topic, which can be asked in the examination.
Right.
When you move on to the mains examination, the value turns from being factual to being impactful. So in the mains examination, you use the current affairs to bring in more impact in your answer. The same answer, the same question can be addressed in 2 ways. One is the static way of looking at it, right? And the other is the current affairs based looking at it. So for example, I'll give you an example which came, a question which came last year. And it asked about the salient features of Harappan civilization. Now, this is the most static question which can be asked. The salient features of Harappan civilization is not going to change, right? But we understand in today's perspective that when we are talking about the Harappan civilization or the Indus Valley civilization, we are also talking about the urban areas over there, right? The how exactly people at that point of time developed the urban areas, or what exactly were the technologies, or let's say the structures that they had built. And then we connect it to the present day urbanization. Take our own city, Delhi. Lot of urban problems. Take the city of Mumbai. Lot of urban problems they are facing. Now, there would be one person who would write a very static answer to it. Ki, okay, these are the features of Harappan civilization. There will be another person who will obviously address this part, the salient feature. But at the end of the question or before the conclusion, somewhere around that, he or she will mention a line that these features, these learnings can be implemented in the present day urban scenario. And then he can give a few examples of Harappan civilization which can be implemented in a modern manner in today's this thing. So this is where the impact value increases, isn't it? Now, obviously, in the mains examination, you do see the direct questions of current affairs as well. That, in fact, you have to prepare separately. Now, when we move on to the interview stage, the value changes. There, they will be asking about the opinion. So, for example, take a question of energy security, right? In the prelims, you will be asked about the various areas where minerals, etc. are found or energy resources are found. That's a factual value of the same current affairs.
Absolutely.
When you move on to the mains examination, right, they will be asking about what challenges India is facing with respect to its energy security or energy transition. Then when you move on to the interview stage, they will ask you, what is your opinion whether India should keep on buying the oil from Russia or not in the present geopolitical scenario. So it becomes opinion based. So current affairs has relevance across the examination, all the three stages. Just that the way of looking at it and the impact and the value changes. That's it.
Right. And now, sir, that we are speaking about the stages itself, and prelims is gone, mains is right around the corner, and almost all aspirants who are expecting to write mains, they have only very similar question in their mind, that what is the role of current affairs in next 2 months, how to align it and how to go by it.
Thankfully, this prelims has gone by. No one would want to face this prelims again, I'm very sure. So when we look at the mains examination, the role of current affairs significantly changes, and in the coming 2 months, I would say that current affairs, how students should look at current affairs is basically how exactly they can increase the value in their answers. Right. So, for example, till now they would have been reading some newspapers, some let's say magazines, some topics of current affairs. They would be making notes out of it, and they would be giving, let's say, 2 to 3 hours per day to newspapers and everything.
Right.
Now something which is going to change is that they will not have so much of time for newspapers, isn't it? They will not have so much of time to even make notes out of current affairs, obviously, because they have a lot of other things to do. They have the optionals, they have all the GS4 papers, all the 4 papers of GS, then essays are there. So a lot of things have to be done, test series has to be given. A lot of hard work and lot of burden is there in these 2 months, right? So certainly the strategy for current affairs has to change. They have to be very specific in choosing the topics, and they have to be very specific in choosing the points also. So in this particular phase, in the mains phase, I would say that current affairs is more about integrating with the static. Whatever static notes you have had, whatever even previous current affairs notes that you have, you simply have to update it. The points have to be updated.
Right.
And if in case a new topic comes in, which is which can be a standalone question in the examination, certainly that has to be prepared separately.
Right. So that marks current affairs as a differentiator for mains exam as well, do you think?
Certainly. Well, I would rather use a term of accelerator, like not just a differentiator.
Right.
It actually accelerates. It is the current affairs which now given everything else which is same. So for example, again, any particular question. Now there are if in case there are, let's say 10,000 people or 13,000 people who are competing in the mains examination, I'm pretty sure that all of those are very serious aspirants, right? And they have learned, they have mugged up each and everything which is there in the static. So if you simply write a static based answer, how will the examiner differentiate you from one person to the other person, right?
Correct.
Now the UPSC's scenario is evolving so fast. We have so much of guidance available online as well as offline, that almost everyone understands or knows the bare minimum. How exactly the answers have to be written, what exactly is the presentation, intro, body, conclusion, case studies, everything is known to everyone. How do you differentiate? You differentiate when you can actually show that you are connected to the nerve of the country, that you are connected to the nerve of the world, and that should show in the answers. That can only come when you're mentioning current affairs. And that too, not just usual current affairs which is there in the news. You have to go deeper, find those very unique points and mention those in the answers. That is where the differentiation comes in. So I think it's not just a differentiator. If you can really use current affairs properly in the answers, I think it's an accelerator. It's an accelerator.
Very particular word and rightly chosen word has been used here. So in this very context, we are talking about current affairs being a differentiator, accelerator, but a lot of students, they have like consumed everything from around.
Right.
But the problem is they are not able to efficiently put.
Correct.
You have mentioned that they should use it.
Correct.
They should put it rightly. But what is the right way to put it or right way to use current affairs?
Right. So that is, I think, this particular problem is the problem for all the examinations that we have.
Right.
From our childhood to the engineering examination to everywhere, one advice which every faculty or every teacher would give you is that read less, apply more. Read less, apply more. That is the advice which we all have also received, and we are giving it right now as well. So the problem is that why are they not able to implement? The main crux of the problem is integration. Is mapping of current affairs with the static. Now you understand, when we read a particular newspaper or when we read a particular news headline, any particular news of current affairs, the content over there is as per the news, right?
Right.
The question which is going to come in the examination is going to be slightly different. They will ask a particular question on some aspect of the news, let's say. Okay? Now the content that you have read is with respect to one news, and the question is a broader question which probably encompasses all the news articles which you might have read under that particular topic. Now, if you have not mapped this to the answer writing, we will never be able to implement current affairs, because this is just content. But in the examination, we need to address the demand of the question, right? So, what is the most important thing is that there are two stages, I would say, of reading current affairs, at least. So, the strategy for current affairs can be divided into two.
Okay.
One could be how to read current affairs, and one could be how to apply the current affairs, right? So I'm talking about the reading stage of current affairs. Now, in the reading stage of current affairs, one is, first of all, obviously you have to read the newspapers, or let's say any news article that you're reading, understand it. Post understanding, divide the entire news article into multiple points, like disintegrate it. Integration is understanding, disintegration is finding out the points which will be relevant for the examination, and then map it. Okay, this point I'll use in this topic under this particular heading. This point will go into this topic under this particular heading. Until and unless this mapping is done while reading the news article, you won't be able to replicate it in the examination or in the answers.
Right.
So it's like reading the current affairs, reading any content for that matter, in the format of writing answer. So you need to have the format of writing answer in your brain always. That is where your answer writing practice comes in. And then when you're reading it, you have to transform the content as per the format of the answer. Once this mapping, this integration is done, definitely then you will be able to recall when you're writing the answer. So that is the major problem, the problem of integration and mapping of current affairs with the static or with the points that you're writing in the answers.
So with this very specific thing, another problem that students encounter, as you said, they need to disintegrate.
Correct.
They take disintegration in form of notes. And that is something that they will be utilizing for further revision.
Right.
Now, in name of notes, there are multiple things available at their discourse. So sometimes students shy away from making notes also. They rather use the compilations and multiple other things that are available.
Magazines and everything.
Everything, right. And if they decide to make their own notes, they don't know how to go about it.
Correct.
So, is this the right choice to look for an alternative? And if not, then what kind of notes, what are the key pointers that they should know in terms of making those notes?
Right. So again, if I have to answer this in one word, the problem over here is that when you read current affairs and when you want to make notes, the problem is that you're doing things in silos. Now, what is the meaning of doing things in silos? So you have huge chunk of information in terms of your, let's say, foundation notes, let's say your NCRTs or whatever standard books that you have read. Huge chunk of information is there, right? Now, when you read current affairs, you deal with current affairs as completely separate thing, rather than this being, as I've talked, as I've discussed in the first question that you asked, key current affairs is like the clothes that you change. So the fundamentals remains the same, right? It's just the manifestation of the fundamentals which change. Now, when you are preparing notes for current affairs, if you are not aware of the fundamentals, if you're not aware of your static notes, if you're not aware of the core base minimum formulas or the minimum points that you have, you will not be able to map it. Then what will happen? Your static notes. Now, so many students come to me. They are like, sir, this is my static notes for GS2. This is my current affairs notes for GS2. I'm like, what will you do? The question will be one question will be asked. You have to integrate both of them, right? So if you're creating static notes, separate notes for foundation, separate notes for static, and separate notes for current affairs, are you going to revise both? Even if you're going to revise both, then how will you connect them both in the examination? That is not possible during the examination. So note making, what has to be done is that, first of all, we all know the formula for note making is that it has to be topic wise.
It has to.
Now that topic could be the topic of the syllabus, could be the topic which is there in news, right? So for one particular topic, you need to have one notes only. That's it. That's a simple formula. Now you are making notes over there from the static portion. Then whenever you are reading current affairs, map it and write it over here itself. Add some, sticky notes or something like that. If you are making offline notes, in digital, it's obviously very, very easy. It is about evolving. So use current affairs as the tool of evolution. Your foundation has to evolve through current affairs rather than current affairs being separate and static being separate. So what you do is that when you make notes, simple thing, when you're reading current affairs, take your static notes along with you, keep the static notes along with you, and whatever points you are getting, keep adding in your static notes.
Right.
That is when you revise the static, you will revise the current affairs as well. Now this is for those topics which are related to static.
Of course.
Now there are so many topics which you might not have read in the static. So for example, the topic could be, let's say, climate finance. Okay. You will not find this topic in the notes because in the notes you will have climate change, the challenges of climate change, all those stuff. But a specific question can come on climate finance because in November itself we had the COP also. And it has been going on. Climate finance is a very prominent issue. So if you have a question on climate finance, you need to have separate notes for climate finance per se, right? Because there is no static replication of it. But for certain topics, for example, cybersecurity, we all have read static content on cybersecurity. What exactly cybersecurity, all those stuff. Whenever a new challenge, whenever let's say AI is bringing in new challenges in cybersecurity. So now the question will not be just on cybersecurity. The question will be how exactly the coming of new technologies, let's say emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, is making cybersecurity more and more a difficult challenge to tackle. Now over here you need the integration of your static, the points of cybersecurity in your static, integrate them with the AI based challenges which is there in the newspaper. Now you cannot have separate notes for it, you have to integrate. In front of, let's say, process of cybersecurity or let's say the stakeholders, you had certain challenges, write the stakeholders wala challenge over here. That is how you have to create notes for the integrated part.
This seems, it's the right way as you suggested, but this seems like an efficient way also to go about it, because that will dial down the challenge of integration and then of course applicating it later.
Isn't it? Right.
So when we are looking at current affairs specifically, no matter at what stage of preparation, aspirants find it endless. They don't have any box to put it in, right?
True.
And especially when we are looking at this time, when there are 2.5 months for mains, this becomes rather difficult. So in this context, what do you feel? Is it lack of effort on the students on their end, or is it lack of strategy?
So first of all, I would not disagree with if the aspirants are really feeling it endless, because not just for the aspirants, even for the faculties, it feels endless. But actually it is not. Nothing can be endless. No, if something is endless, you cannot handle it.
Right.
So more than effort, I would say it's a lack of strategy, although they both are connected.
Okay.
So if you do not have strategy, then you might put in effort for some time. After that, the effort will, it will reduce, because you do not know where to move and how to move. So I understand this more from the perspective of lack of strategy.
Okay.
And the lack of strategy, why I say that it is lack of strategy, because we do not understand that what kind of questions are being asked in the examination and where exactly the current affairs has to be used. So before reading current affairs, or for that matter before preparing for any examination, you have to understand the demand of the examination.
Right.
So let's break it down into where exactly current affairs will be used, specifically from the mains perspective.
Okay.
So in the mains, you have to write answers, as simple as that. It has intro, body and conclusions, right? Then in the mains, you have the essays also, and you have the optionals also. Okay? Now, there are two types of current affairs, broadly speaking. One which is a proper current affairs topics, though I gave the example of climate finance. It could be a separate topic on its own. Second are those kind of news which cannot become a topic on its own. So for example, some corruption case has happened. So directly in GS 1, 2 or 3, they will not ask a question on corruption. Probably in GS 4 it can come, but not in GS 2 and 3.
Right.
But corruption based cases or case studies or examples that can be used in the answers. So you cannot miss out on those news as well. So there are two types of news. One which becomes the part of the answer. So you have to figure out, okay, if some report is mentioned, I have to mention this in the introduction,
Right.
right? If something else is mentioned, let's say data is mentioned, I have to use in the examples or in the argumentative part, right?
Right.
Or if some kind of, let's say, targets or aim is mentioned, I'll use it in the conclusion.
Right.
Now, those news in themselves cannot become topic, but they are pointers in your answers,
Yes.
right? Second type of current affairs is those which can actually become the topic, right? So it looks endless. Why? Because we are preparing current affairs in silos. We take each and every topic, we prepare in depth, and obviously we will not see the question in the examination, right? And we miss out on those small things which were actually the validation which we had to use.
Right.
So when we are looking at current affairs, it looks endless because of 15 pages of newspaper that you have to read every day, or let's say 130 pages of magazine that you have to read every day. But we are not understanding ki as per PYQs, as per the questions which can be asked in the examination, what is the real relevance of this question or this particular topic. So once we have the understanding of PYQs, once we have the understanding of the answer writing format,
Right.
when we have both these two, then we will be able to reduce the noise in the current affairs. We'll be able to understand ki, okay, this part I only have to study till this particular portion. Beyond this is not needed. This topic has to go in depth. This topic doesn't have to go in depth. It will just be an example in my answer.
Right.
So once we understand the PYQs, we understand the answer writing framework or the template, ki how exactly I am going to write the answer.
Right.
Then you can apply the current affairs. Then it will look small. It will look less because you will understand ki what exactly I have to read for the examination. That's it. You'll understand the depths you have to explore.
Sir, but from the aspirant's perspective, this seems huge. Like understanding PYQs, understanding the template, figuring out the template, then deciding on current affairs which needs to go in depth, which needs to get served. Like, how do they go about it? Like,
Right.
some students might be able to take
Correct.
on this, but to greater length, we have to address what can be what can exactly help them better.
Correct. So what I would say is that none of the students, I think, can really excel in the examination if they do not have the understanding of PYQs, right? And again, as we have discussed, the way UPSC has evolved, we cannot write good answers until and unless we know the various templates, we know the various ways of writing answers, which all other students know. Right? So you need to first of all know the bare minimum, and I think PYQs, right? Understanding PYQs and understanding the framework for answer writing is bare minimum these days. These days, right? Now, how do you actually implement this? Saying is easier, no? Ki when you read the newspaper, try to map it, integrate it. It's a difficult and a challenging process, right? But once you build the habit, it becomes easy. But how to do it? Let's delve deeper into that. So what you do is that, for example, everyone would be writing test series in this particular phase in the 2 months, right? When you write the first answer, you write the second answer, third answer, fourth answer, you might not be able to integrate the current affairs. Why? For the simple reason, because the current affairs was going on in silos till this point of time, and the static was going on in other silo. Okay? So what you do is that once you have written one answer, take out each and every point that you have written and think ki which current affairs point I can add in this particular this point. Like for example, which example I can give over here. What is the data point I can give over here. So if you do this exercise for, let's say, 10-15 question, your mind will automatically start thinking ki along with the point, it will start thinking of the example, because you're training your mind ki when you write the answer, along with the point, give me the example as well. So you have lot of examples in your repository. It's just about the mind to find out using an algorithm ki, okay, which example will go in which particular point. So how you do it? You make mistakes in the initial few tests. You write 10-15 answers, but obviously you will not be able to integrate current affairs. Then you pick up each and every question. For example, introduction. How do I improve this introduction using current affairs? Which context can I mention? Can I mention, so for example, Harappan civilization, right? Now Harappan civilization is a very static question.
Yes.
Now can you in the introduction mention some urban problem? Okay, this particular thing, it is in context, we are reading this particular thing in the context. Why? Because urban areas are facing the problem.
Right.
So once you write an introduction, you write a bad introduction, doesn't matter. Try to incorporate, try to improve with current affairs in the second round. Then in the third round, like that. Till the point you reach to an extent ki, okay, now this answer looks like a balanced answer of a static and a current affairs based approach. So that is the exercise which you have to do for initial few tests.
Understood.
Post that, your mind will automatically start giving you the examples and the data points. That is the method of incorporating current affairs in answer writing.
So the method seems challenging and a lot of hard work.
Right.
But at the same time, whenever we talk about hard work in the preparation, there is another word which is used a lot, that is smart work.
Smart work, correct.
Right. So do you think there is existence of smarter approach towards current affairs?
Absolutely. So, let's talk about first of all the traditional ways of current affairs.
Okay.
How people study current affairs traditionally.
Okay.
One way, there are two major ways. One is that there will be some set of people who are actually just reading the newspapers, right? They are making the notes out of the newspapers, right? And they're using their own notes. Maybe at the end, sometimes they are referring to some magazines or something. Otherwise, they majorly rely on newspapers or let's say some videos on YouTube. Okay. Second set of people are those who have reduced the relevance of newspaper a bit. So, for example, they are reading newspapers, but they're not making notes out of newspapers.
Okay.
They are relying on the magazines, the consolidated magazine, for their notes, right? The third type of student is even, let's say, has made it even more shorter. So, they first of all read the magazines. Whatever topics they feel like is important, they'll go to the further depth using the newspapers. So, those are the three set of people, three types of approaches of current affairs. Now, what is the problem in the first approach? The problem in the first approach is that it is the most hard-working approach. Reading all the newspapers every day. If you skip one day, you'll feel like, oh, I have missed on something. Right? Making notes out of newspaper becomes a very challenging thing. It does. Okay? But it is highly rewarding because whatever points come, it comes from your heart, isn't it? So, because you are making notes out of the very big article. So, the replication or let's say the recall capacity is more in the first method, but again the time constraint is there. In the second method, it's more balanced. I would say because you are well aware of what is going on in the newspaper, right? But you are relying for those very important points on these magazines or compilations or the classes that you are taking. So I feel this is a more balanced approach. When you go to the third approach, which is just relying on the magazines and completely or to a great extent ignoring the newspapers, there is a problem. Why? Because if you look at it, if you look at the questions which UPSC is asking these days, let's say it's a statement based question. From where do they pick the statements? They pick the statements from the newspapers or some articles, some magazine, the government magazines or let's say like that. Okay. Now, these kind of questions cannot be answered using the points given in the magazine, because in the magazine, it's a very narrow based points which is suitable for a particular topic, right? So, if you're simply relying on the magazines completely and not relying on the newspapers, you will not be able to write multi-dimensional answers, or you will not be able to write answers to those questions which requires integration. I'll give you an example. So, last year they asked a question on urbanization only, and they asked how come artificial intelligence, drones, GIS and remote sensing can be used for local planning and local and aerial planning. Now this you will not find in any particular source, because this is the integration of multiple technologies coming together, and then they are asking question on urbanization, right? So these points you will get in the newspapers only. Because when we are creating the magazines, you will not think that you cannot create a very bulky magazine, right? Obviously, there is a limitation in that as well. Another question, if you take, so they will ask a question on, let's say, last year only they asked a question in ethics. Now even ethics has current affairs. Ki how come national security is getting in conflict with the environment? So, for example, the projects that you have in the border regions, right? They have national security importance.
Absolutely.
But they are the Great Nicobar project that we have, that we keep hearing about it, okay? But they have ecological problems as well. Now, such kind of questions where there is integration of security with environment and ethics, you cannot get in simply in the magazines.
Right.
So, I think the smartest approach would be to go through the newspapers, have the awareness of newspapers, whatever small points validation you are getting, make notes out of it. For bigger topics, rely on the consolidated material, that is through the magazines or something like that. That could be the balanced approach of preparing any current affairs.
Understood, sir. So in this context, it seems like a very elaborated process, and I'm sure a lot of students have a fair idea with experience and with guidance and everything. But at the same time, because this is an elaborated process, it's a detailed one where a lot of work goes in, there are also gaps.
Correct.
Because they don't have that experience, they can't see it from the different side, they don't know the gaps.
Right.
So what are the major gaps that you feel that exist in the What are the major gaps that exist in the preparation of current affairs through the methods that you have just talked about?
So, like till now, what we have talked about is that if in case you're preparing current affairs on your own, if in case you want to do everything on your own, what could be the strategy, or what exactly you have to achieve, right? So, I've shown you the bigger picture.
Right.
Okay, this is the ultimate thing that you have to achieve.
Absolutely.
This is how you have to do it, and these will be the challenges.
Correct.
Now, of course, in this entire process, it might take a lot of time. And that actually happens when you prepare on your own. So this is something that we also figured out ki what exactly are the issues which students are facing. So for example, the biggest challenge that they face and that they will face while reading newspapers or a magazine would be selecting the topic.
Right.
That which topic should I read in depth? That is the first problem that you will face, right? Then even if in case you are able to select the topic, the second problem that you will face is how to make notes out of it. To what extent should I make the notes? Even if you are able to make the notes, the third challenge that you will face is that what kind of questions can come in the examination in which I will use my points, right? That is the third challenge that you are going to face. Then the fourth challenge would be ki so much of current affairs news is there, how to reduce the noise of it, how to find out those. So for example, there's a 1200 page editorial. Only 5 points are important in that editorial, but you have to spend the entire time to read the editorial, understand it, and then you will come up with just 5 points, right? So that is another challenge, to reduce the noise. So for that particular perspective only, we have created this Smart Current Affairs program, wherein we come up with the most important topics first of all. So if you see in the UPSC, they will majorly ask questions thematically. So it will be a thematic question which will be connected to current affairs, right? So they can pick up a static theme and they will ask the current relevance of that particular theme or what exactly is going on in that particular theme. So we do the hard work from our side ki okay, let us choose the topics for you. Right. So that makes the job of the students easier.
Yes.
You do not have to mince through all the newspapers, all the magazines, the PIBs, the Sunset TV, all those kind of things to find the most important topics. Right. Because to choose a topic also, you have to have the understanding of the PYQs. Ki what exactly has been going on in the what UPSC has been asking before. That understanding you also need to have. So we do that particular. First is that particular that the classes that we take is majorly thematic in nature.
Right.
Second is what points should we give in the classes so that they can directly replicate in the answers. So that is what we keep in our mind, ki especially in the mains phase, when we start the mains current affairs, we'll keep this in mind ki that the points are so precise, so unique that it adds the differentiator or the accelerator value, as well as it reduces your burden of recalling and remembering everything. So we pick up the most important points, the most unique points from all these sources. We do the hard work from our end, and then we curate that handout or whatever content that we're giving so that you can directly write the answers in the examination. Okay. Third is, let's say, as I told you that if you are preparing in silos, static different, current affairs different, you won't be able to write the answers. So for that particular thing, and which is the major problem which students are facing, how to incorporate current affairs in the answers. So for that particular thing, we have come up with the live answer writing, which happens in every class. So in every class, we'll discuss 2 to 3 questions, which will have some easy questions, maybe one difficult question, in which the direct implementation of the classes has to be done in a question, right? So we might ask you a static question, but you have to write a static plus current affairs answer. We might ask you a direct current affairs question in which you have to go deeper into the answers. And then how to do all these things is something that we do in the classes. Now this year, we have added one more aspect to it. We are coming up with the entire current affairs test series. So after every class, after every week, at the end of the week, you have a sectional test, right? So there will, in the mains phase, you will have 8 sectional tests, right? Every week you will have a sectional test, so that whatever 3 to 4 classes has happened in that particular week will ask questions, so that there will be an integration of content of all the classes in the questions. So that is how we are trying to create the questions as well. So you learn the process of integration right there. Okay. So this is a new addition that we have made, and I think one apart from all this objective parameters, I think one problem which the students face is that accessibility of the faculties. Like they keep on running behind everyone, ki how exactly to study and everything. So I think in our program, we make sure that that amount of time we spend in the class is equivalent to the amount of time we spend outside the class also with the students.
Right.
So if the class gets over at 8:30, I would be here in the office till 10:30, and other faculties as well.
Right.
So it's like accessibility to the faculties is something we really boast of. We all are easily available. So I think using all these objective parameters, I think the burden of the students reduces and their understanding improves of a particular topic. They can, implement the knowledge into various papers from essay to their optionals, even in the interview stage. So I think that's the USP of the program that we have over here.
Very well illustrated, sir, and I'm sure this is a way where student can get a lot of help and a lot of things will be eased out as well.
Right.
Because there is a lot of balancing that comes in just 2.5 months.
Right.
So a little burden off their shoulder that they can understand and consider. So one thing that you mentioned and I picked up, you talked about test series. You mentioned
Correct.
test series. And in this phase, test series assumes a monumental role.
Absolutely.
But when we are talking about current affairs especially, because we have labeled it as the accelerator, what is the role of test series here? How it can actually change the game further?
So in one word, the role of test series is to open your mind.
Right.
Right? Is to reduce your fear. So, so for example, again, if I ask you a question on salient features of Harappan civilization,
Right.
everyone, the intelligent ones, or let's say the hardworking aspirants,
Yes.
they all will write the salient features of Harappan civilization.
Absolutely.
Not a problem as well. But then, what will the test series do? If we ask this in the test series, and if you write simply the the salient features of Harappan civilization, you probably will get 2.5 or 3 marks out of it. Why? Because other students, right, who are trained in current affairs, they'll be integrating each static point with a current affairs relevance as well, right? They probably at the end of it, they will mention a case study also. In the conclusion, they will mention something which is broader, not just historical. Okay? So this is how the test series opens the mind of the student.
Right.
It shows the person the other dimensions which can come into your answers, right? And through the process of testing and learning. So, for example, if I just tell in the classes, okay, these are the points which you need to write, and the students remembers it, it will still not be implemented in the examination because you have not written it.
Yes.
Okay? But if in case I tell a few points, I give you a topic, and then I take a test first, and then after the test I discuss it with you, your mind opens further. So that is how the test series really helps in current affairs and in the mains phase, specifically in integrating the current affairs with the static answers. That is where the role of test series comes in.
That makes so much sense. And in this context, because we have talked about the Harappa question twice or thrice now, this gave me a brief idea into the fact that when we look at history, sir, we discard current affairs very easily.
Absolutely, yes.
We don't believe history and current affairs sit together at all.
Right.
But current affairs is not a separate paper, right?
Right.
It will be integrated, it will be present throughout GS and
Right.
also essay and ethics.
Right, absolutely.
And when we are looking at like that, students also consider which GS paper would need more current affairs, which would need less. What are your thoughts about this?
So it's an easy answer. I guess we all understand that the two papers, which is GS3 and GS2, they are very hardly anchored to current affairs. Obviously, in GS3, all the sections almost from economics to agriculture to environment, science and tech, internal security, all of them have current affairs relevance. And even the questions you see in the examination are majorly derived from current affairs only.
Right.
Okay. Similarly, in the GS2, in the governance or social justice and the IR portion, you have major contribution of current affairs.
Right.
But this is where we talked about the 13,000, 15,000 students who are actually competing in the mains examination, they all know this.
Right.
They all are very well aware that, okay, GS2 and GS3 are the subjects where current affairs has huge relevance. So they all will study this. Who will not study it? The person who will study current affairs in, let's say, geography, in, let's say, history, in, let's say, social issues, if he is able to integrate current affairs over there, that is the jump which will come in. So if in case you use current affairs in GS3, your marks might go up from 5 to 10 marks or 15 marks, that's it.
Understood.
But if in case you start using current affairs in GS1, that is where the largest jump will come in. If in case you start using current affairs in ethics, that is where the largest jump will come in. Because you see the questions of ethics these years. So they last year only they asked a question on let's say internet and social media, and how come the various things in internet and social media are ethical in nature or not, something like that. So they picked up a current affairs theme. Internet and social media is a current affairs theme, and they're asking a ethical question on that particular thing. Right? They have asked questions on artificial intelligence as well, that using AI in the administration, how ethical it is, something like that they asked, I think 1 year back or 2 years back. So they are picking up current affairs based questions, themes, and asking the questions in ethics as well. So earlier we were only concerned about ethics being ethical only, or only writing moral answers, value based answers. But right now you have to integrate current affairs in the ethics as well. So I would say essays definitely current affairs, GS2 and GS3 definitely current affairs, but the largest difference comes when you start using current affairs in GS1. That is where no one else is using it. Right? That is where it's also difficult to use over there, because it's also difficult to think over there, and that is where the practice comes in when we do in the classes. So even if whatever topic we are teaching, we also deal with the ethical aspects of those topic. Maybe that question can be asked. So when in fact I remember when I was teaching AI in the class, I talked about the ethical implications of AI. And that same year, AI question was not there in GS3 where I actually taught it, but it was actually in ethics. So that is how you see ki, if you start using current affairs in GS1 and GS4 especially, I think the marks boost a lot. That is where the relevance comes in.
Wow. Sir, we have covered the broad length of current affairs. At least we have tried to. Now let's move towards a quick rapid fire round.
Sure.
Right. The most overrated source for current affairs?
I would say magazines. So they have, I would say, I will not completely discard the magazines. They have their limited utility. Why? Because as I told you, in the statement based questions, the magazines are of no use. In the questions which require integration of multiple themes, the magazines are of no use. So for example, they ask a question on urbanization, ki how smart city is responsible for social justice. Magazines, you will not find any use of relevance of magazines. So magazines do have their limited role, but I would say they are highly overrated. Because of this overrating that we have given the magazines, newspapers are taking a hit, which I feel very bad about.
So what would be the most underrated source for current affairs?
For that is the newspapers. The newspapers, or let's say even in fact the PIB that we have. So obviously PIB is a very huge resource. If it is not possible for one student to go through the entire PIB articles, and that is where we come in. We do that hard work and we distill out the content and give it to you in the classes. So I feel the government resources, the newspapers, the reports, let's say of Niti Aayog or some other reports, and the PIB is the most underrated one. But when you track the sources of the questions, you see the majority of the questions are coming from those areas.
Wow. One GS paper where current affairs can dramatically improve marks?
So the obvious answer is GS3, but in my heart, I would say it's GS1. GS1.
What should be the main focus for current affairs, data or examples?
This should be both, I guess. We can, both are equally important. Depends on where you are writing the answer and which subject you are writing the answer. So for instance, examples become very important in governance based questions, in social justice based questions. You need to write case studies, or let's say in ethics you need to write case studies, right? But when you write the answer of GS3, let's say economics, you have to be data driven. For example, when you're writing the question on, let's say, science and technology, some data has to be there, or you're writing a question on very specific topic, you have to be data driven. But when you're trying to give the emotional answer in ethics, in let's say social justice, in social issues, you have to be example driven. So both are equally important depending on where you are using it.
Where should the aspirant concentrate its energy? Note making, answer writing?
Okay, so note making, answer writing, obviously both are important, but over here the crux is they are interconnected, like they work in cycle. So I'll give you an example. So you read one topic, you made notes out of it, okay? Then immediately I ask you a question on that particular topic. You will write some answer which will have these points, right? But you will not get full marks in the answer. Why? Because this question demanded more than what you had read. Right? Then once the feedback is there in your answers, you again go back and improve your notes, right? Then with using this notes, you again write an answer to a different question. Again, you get a feedback, again you improve the notes. So it's a cycle which goes on. So note making and answer writing is a cycle. You cannot start at one. right? You cannot make one perfect and then move on to the next one. It's not that you will write perfect answers first and then the notes, and of course not that you can make perfect notes first and then start writing answers. The note making improves because of answer writing improves because you have better notes. So it's a simple cyclical process.
Amazing. So that was all for in terms of questions, sir. But one last piece of advice that you would like to give to the aspirants for 2027 also, and
Right.
the ones who are writing mains 2026.
So for the ones who are writing the exam in 2026 mains, I would say first of all, be balanced in your answer. I think having a balance of static and current affairs is very important. That gives the best impression to an examiner. Second thing, I would say that do not delve too much into the current affairs. You have to very selectively pick up the points. You have to very selectively pick up the topics. Whatever topics are you think that can be directly asked as a question, only in those topics you have to go deeper into the analysis. But certain topics will be just the points in your answer, right? And third thing would be spend more time in application of current affairs right now rather than just reading more and more current affairs. So whatever static notes you have already, whatever the hard work you have done with respect to current affairs in the past 1 year, I would say improving those notes using the present newspaper that you are reading, you will get very less time anyway, but improving those notes should be the priority. Map it, okay, this question will go over there, this point will go in this particular question, like that. So integration and mapping is something that you need to do more often. So brainstorming is the method. Like once you are dealing with the question, instead of just writing the question, brainstorm the question. Okay, what kind of current affairs points I can write in this particular question? That is how your brain will start, thinking in the direction of current affairs. Now, for those who are going to give it for the next year, 2027, the advice would be do not at all neglect the newspapers. Don't try to have shortcuts that simply by reading a particular magazine at the end of the month, you'll be able to get all the gyan, all the understanding of current affairs. That is definitely not possible. When you read the newspapers every day, it builds an internal awareness about what exactly is going on in the world or in India. But yes, for note-making purpose or for certain bigger topics, you can rely on these compilations as well. But do not at all leave the newspapers. And second thing, for the 2027 aspirants, do not immediately start making the notes of current affairs. Until and unless your static is to some extent prepared, if you make current affairs notes, it will become silos. Current affairs will go in one direction, static will go in another direction. So for that matter, work more on your static right now. Maybe at a later time, start working more on the current affairs once the static is done. So I think those two will be the advice for the respective students.
That was all, sir. Thank you so much. It was a well spread out, insightful session. It was amazing to have you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.